Hello, hello. We are live with our Wise Woman interview series, and we have the one and only Bree Jewell here today. And she is going to share more about herself, her journey, experiences, the recent success and opportunities that not only has she given herself, she's given the people around her an experience and what we absolutely love. And I can say this because at first, Bree was a referral from Lori Love Jones. I feel like I need a commercial. Lori Love Jones, Lori Love Jones. You can tell that Lori Love Jones has stepped into her absolute gift, and that is she's very resourceful and she knows the greatest people. And Bree is one of them. And so most of the time when I get referred to somebody, I know a little bit about them. And yet, now, for a number of days and months, we've been able to connect in a multitude of ways. I got to meet Bree in person when I was in Nashville and feel her spirit and her joy and her gift of rhythm, not only in dance, but also in song. So jealous there. So jealous in the song side. I was talking in line and I did not get that gift. And so got to meet her in person, and now we've been able to work together online, even though she's in Nashville, Tennessee. I'm in Michigan, and all of the Worthy Collective is all over. We have gotten to know and love Bree for her resourcefulness, her resilience, the ability to find solutions in areas that sometimes people give up. And what is so exciting is to see this place in which she is stepping in and sharing from some really, really tough places that we all know that many give up. They give up, they give in, and they say, there's no use. And Bree did not do that personally, professionally, and physically. And so now she gets to share from a very, very special place and true experience and maneuvering areas. When I first met her, I knew she was somebody who researched, she's going to figure this out. She's not going to take something at just the face value. And now, what I've learned after knowing her for a little bit more than a moment, that she does more than the research. She does deep dive. She takes the education, she takes it from multiple different places, and then she's able to organize it in such a fashion that I can't wait to be in her space for the workshops that she's preparing for others because she is chapters ahead of so many because of her personal experience and willingness to get in there and learn something when, based on her story, you'll learn that she didn't have to, she doesn't have to. And sometimes that's the only way somebody does do something is because they have to. And she doesn't. She doesn't need a business. She has a very successful family business. She chooses to, and she knows that ripple effect when she shares. We did some sessions together, and like that skill set of hers to help me through transition, challenges, and things that sometimes people carry for the rest of their lives thinking that it's just them, it's just me. I have to deal with this and deal with it alone. And she takes opportunities to share and explore ways so that you have tools, resources, and options to heal, learn, and be able to grow in ways that I actually didn't know were completely available because I was in a different book. I mean, I wasn't even in the same book of hers because of her knowledge and her skill set, her education, certifications, all these things that she's chosen into. So when you come alongside of somebody who has done the work, you benefit as well. And so I'm so excited for you to get to know Bree. She's going to share her story, her journey, and she'll also share ways to connect with her. So if there's some pieces of her story that connect you yourself or someone you love, that you can pass on her information and be a resource or tool so that someone is not miserable. because misery is a choice. And in today's world, we have options and choices like never before based on technology that can connect us in ways that back in the day you could only do so much business in a circle circumference, and that is not the case anymore. So I bring you today the none other, Bree Jewell.
Oh man, I hope I can live up to that intro.
Oh, you got this.
That's very sweet of you to say all those wonderful things about me. I thank you so much for having me on and giving me the opportunity to introduce myself and just, I don't know, have this chat with you. It's always a pleasure.
It's the best. And I'm grabbing my pen and paper. I actually had to get a new notebook because I was like, oh yeah, I know that there will be little nuggets because you've been deep in the work. You've been so much in the work, and that's the blessing for all of us to witness and experience. So what actually brought you to where you're the work of what you're sharing?
So in so basically for 11 years from the ages of 25 to 36, I began to suffer with worsening and compounding symptoms of co-infections due to chronic Lyme disease. I didn't get a diagnosis until 2012, at which point I literally thought I was dying, actually. I thought I had some kind of rare cancer that nobody could figure out. I'd been going to doctors after doctors after doctors, specialists, and so on, and to no avail. So basically, I, in hindsight, I can look back and I can see how 11 years of chronic stress. And, for somebody else, it might not have been chronic stress because I just didn't have any coping mechanisms at the time. I was a people pleaser. I was a perfectionist. I was a conflict avoider. Uh, those things are just not a good recipe. It's a recipe for disaster and a recipe for illness, actually. So basically, by 2000 and my journey to health begins in 2011 before I got a diagnosis, or maybe it was early 2012. I'm not sure exactly of the timeline, but the bottom line is at that point I was completely mentally miserable and I was in so much mental and physical pain that I thought I was dying, and I just knew that I couldn't I live this way anymore. And I had a complete apathy for life at the time. I felt like I didn't want to get out of bed in the mornings. I didn't want to go on. I didn't want to, I felt like if one more person put a single other demand on my time, I was going to literally explode. And so, like I said, I wasn't coping. By 8 o'clock in the morning, I couldn't pick my head up off the desk.
Mm,
I couldn't get up out of a chair, out of bed in the morning without limping.
mm,
I had the typical arthritic joint pain that comes with Lyme disease from my feet to my neck. So I was in pain all over my body all of the time. And I mean, I could list a bunch of symptoms here, chronic infections from you name it, ear infections to female infections to skin problems, seborrheic dermatitis. Let me think. Oh, at that point, I felt like flies were crawling on my legs all of the time because it had gotten into my nervous system. So I was constantly shuffling the bugs off my legs and literally looking for flies, because I was like, it was just so uncomfortable. And I had gotten to where I couldn't finish sentences anymore. I would walk into somebody's office to say something to them and forget from my office to their office what I was there for, or I would start talking and then couldn't finish my sentence.
mm,
We kind of referred to me as the scatterbrain at that point, and not really understanding how powerful words and thoughts and things are at the time. And so I was in really rough shape, and it my journey to health began with starting to go to a chiropractor for my
mm.
neck pain. because I used to tell my husband, just take me in the backyard and shoot me if I have to hold my head up for 1 second longer.
Mm,
And finally I decided to buy a package, and I'd never dealt with chiropractors in that way before. So it felt like, oh, this is a lot of money. What am I doing? But through that chiropractor, they were really into nutrition, like so many of them are. And my husband and I had not, it's funny because I've been researching holistic medicine and therapies and things like that my whole adult life since well, I went to school for massage therapy for 2 years in Canada. So even then, even my college education was in the holistic world. So from the age of, say, 20 forward, I've been living in this sort of holistic world, but I never connected the dots with food and
mm,
the importance of nutrition. So my husband and I had been eating basically terribly for all those years. And through this chiropractor, I got my first glimmer of hope because I started to discover how important nutrition was, to read ingredient labels, to buy organic, to learn about the dirty dozen and the clean 15 and start avoiding pesticides and things in boxes, started taking a hot plate to work, cooking my own meals, and just having, just finally taking care of myself, just in this one or two, I should say, chiropractic and food, these two small ways of taking care of myself when I'd been just being all things to everyone else up until that point, gave me my first glimmer of hope towards healing. I was finally thinking, no, I'm not going to die. I'm 36 years old. Someone's going to figure this out and I'm going to get well. And then I was referred, you know, I never really complained about how sick I was. Nobody really knew, not my family, not my husband. I wasn't someone who really always talked about how much pain I was in or anything. I just kept pushing through life. And finally, one day, a salesperson who I barely knew had popped into the business, and I was so tired. And I was just telling him how terrible I felt. And he said, my girlfriend goes to a functional medicine doctor. You need to talk to her. And so I did, and I got this doctor's number and I made an appointment and took my blood work actually from an internist at Vanderbilt. And he read the blood work and said, well, did they tell you you have Lyme disease? And these vitamin and mineral deficiencies and this and this. And he explained why and how they read the testing versus how they read the Lyme test in the Western world. And I don't know if things have changed now. That was a long time ago, but he explained all of that to me. And through supplementation and, well, so I had the luxury, obviously, of discussing with my husband the option of quitting work because at that point I wasn't feeling like I was really of use to anyone, anyways. So we talked about it. We decided I would quit working and throw myself into trying to get well. And, I want to say accidentally, but I don't believe that there are accidents, right? So obviously it was a God thing. My mother, of all people, who I don't think well, at that point, definitely hadn't meditated a day in her life. She probably saw it on Oprah or Ellen or something like that. And she suggested I learn to meditate. And I was so desperate that I decided to do that. And I had been introduced to a new friend who I happened to just call up and say, hey, do you happen to teach meditation? Have no idea why I asked this person that. There was no real rhyme or reason. And she said, no, but I go to a center, a Buddhist meditation center. Why don't you meet me there on Wednesday? And we hadn't met yet. And so I was up for meeting a new friend and giving this a whirl. And so I showed up to that place and went there twice a week for a year,
mm.
pretty much didn't miss. And so that's where I learned to meditate. And it's really, that was an important part of my journey just because I had tried to meditate on my own. And like so many people, I was like, well, this is impossible. I can't shut my brain off. The hamster's on the wheel. I had really bad insomnia too, because I wasn't just ruminating all day, but I was ruminating all night too. So rumination is something you don't know what comes first, the chicken or the egg, because Lyme does get in the nervous system and it can cause anxiety and depressive symptoms and things like that. But so that hamster was on that wheel 24/7. And so being able to go to a Buddhist meditation center and have the teacher, there was a lot of silence, of course, but every so often he'd be like, "You're probably thinking about your grocery list. That's normal. Bring your awareness back to your breath. There's no way to do this wrong, And for a perfectionist, it was like, oh, okay, because I thought I was doing it wrong. So so that was a huge, huge thing for me. And I would just lay in the floor in our bedroom, to be honest. We had this really plush rug. And some days I would lay on the floor in the bedroom and I would come out of meditation and I'd have been in there for 4 hours.
Mm.
So I'm sure I fell asleep sometimes. That's what my body probably needed sometimes. But I also know that I didn't fall asleep sometimes because I remember having visuals or experiences anyways, I attribute I got well very quickly and I got extremely well and I've maintained that good health for 14 years now. So I attribute much of that to what I've learned about the power of the mind. We now know science knows what meditation does for the brain. And so we now know that these ancient practices that people knew from ancient times, from biblical times, from all these, you know, from a long, long, long time ago have science to back them. So we can see how they're physiologically working in the brain and body to create healing. And so for me, that's super exciting. This is what I like to share with people, and this is why I now do what I do.
And I think what's so profound is that you have 14 years of success. And that's the part that is so, I mean, I know we've talked about this, but then I'm not sure that we did talk about it, like the strength of that, because we all know that weight is always an issue. Like for women, especially all the different parts, especially we've been talking a lot in the Worthy Collective about menopause and how that changes and all those things. And the worst part is there's things out there and people will lose weight, but as soon as they go back to like life, then it comes back tenfold. So your 14 years,
Yep.
you've had stress, you've lost people, you've lost an animal that's part of your family that, you've celebrated milestones within your family for all sorts of things. You've traveled back and forth from US to Canada. You've lived through a super extreme number of years with COVID that can literally be a trigger because it was isolation, it was sickness, it was a number of things. So those 14 years, and I can't calculate the number of months or weeks or days, but that's it. That's such encouragement because you didn't do just one thing, only one thing. I know you've read Course in Miracles, what, once or twice. You
Twice. Yeah.
your practice of learning and now taking that learning is such a gift. And I'm so glad that you shared so deeply about the meditation part because I remember the same thing. Everything, I pulled it off my shelf. These are actually real books. I talked about the Miracle Morning and how Hal Elrod, let me make sure. Yeah, Elrod. His co-partner is Cameron Herold. Um, anyway, just meaning that in his book and what he's created is the savers, and the first one is silence.
Hmm.
And literally he says meditation and prayer and all these different ways. And truly what that is it's settling. It's absolutely settling our mind, body, and our soul. And if we don't stop long enough to calm ourselves, nothing is going to change.
Yeah, there's an Einstein quote, you can't solve a problem with the same energy that created it. And
Mhm.
so by taking ourselves, like if we're like this, we're not solving problems, right? So we have to calm the nervous system, we have to self-regulate, and to take it even a step further, within that stillness, with practice, you gain more and easier access to God, to it can go by many names for people, right? And in my practice, obviously, I say what resonates with people. We call it super conscious, we call it unity consciousness, we call it, I mean, I call it God. But whatever people want to refer to it as, that is the creation intelligence. That is the problem solving creativity, the creative solutions for all of your problems are coming from that place. So we calm the nervous system and we get still enough so that we can figure out how to solve our problems creatively.
Um, what's so interesting to me is that so many times when we're faced with something challenging, and in our Worthy Collective, we mainly are, it's all women. And so we have a commonality um, in the fact that there's some things that are very similar. And yet, I'd say the second most similar part of us is that we've been made to go. We've been
Yeah.
made to, and especially in the world today with internet and all these and social media, and I can say this because we have a variety of ages in the collective, that I've been recognizing that no matter what, when it does come to our faith, it's really interesting because we'll say, I'm faith-filled and God's driving or the universe, or again, respecting where somebody's choices are, how interesting it is that we take back that spot, where we're like, I'm driving, and really we're the passenger, and how hard that is to let someone lead because we're like, I got this. I'm gonna do this. And then how many times people say, I just don't have time. And I'm like, I know what you're saying because I said it before. And then I'd sit there and be like, am I going to fall asleep? Am I going to do this? It's such a simple edit. And I know Stacy, I'm not sure if you were on one of our calls when we were talking about how she has a long drive to work.
Hmm.
It's, sometimes it's hard. You just got to get to the car. So
Yeah.
she was figuring out where her space would be to be silent because somebody's um, perfect meditation could look like this beautiful form and the crisscross applesauce and it's on a little pillow or whatever. Well, hers, she finally realized, was a few minutes before she went into work, or what she recognized was driving in silence.
Well, you're bringing, it's funny because I'm sitting here thinking of a point earlier that I wanted to make, and then you just brought me right into it. Thank you very much. So,
Yay.
so yeah, once you sit enough times, or for me, in my experience, once I sat enough times and studied enough of this stuff, I realized that actually meditation doesn't necessarily have to be sitting still in that perfect posture. It can be washing a dish.
Mm,
It can be because the more we get in alignment, right, with the will of God, with our higher selves, whatever the case may be, the more we operate in the world day to day from that aligned place.
mm,
So it requires maybe not as much sitting,
mm,
but we can get still just in the moments of, for me, when I was sick, I wasn't, there was nothing still about when I was washing dishes. I was like, if she says this, I'm going to say that. And if he says, I was fighting with everybody in my head, like nothing was going right. I was mad. I was, you know, stressed. I was constantly it was insanity, really.
mhm,
And so now it's just so nice to be able to stand at the sink and do dishes without actually thinking about anything, or just you can think about the feel of the dishes in your hands, or maybe, or now I can contemplate things, but not from a place of, "Ugh," you know, now it's like, oh, this is happening, or I do have to work on this, and maybe I'm getting ideas and downloads because I'm not I'm not in fight or flight. So,
And I love how you just explained that because so many times people will say we need to be more present.
mhm.
And I think to myself, well, if you don't recognize that it starts with a choice of where you are, so it doesn't have to be that perfect, like I have a pillow and it's got to be this, and I have to light a candle or blah, it like great, super. If that's what you want and you're going to do for yourself, beautiful. There's no judgment. It's a matter of being in that place, and yet, like you said, it carries over into every area of your life. And what I found, there was a quote one time that said something about looking up.
Mhm.
And in this world, especially with this, how many people are doing this most of the time? And so that looking up, and as you say that, I think now, because my kids kind of laugh, and today Declan was making comments because we had a little bit longer drive in the sun, and the leaves were changing. There was a conversation of looking up and out and understanding the nature is changing. So it was a different conversation. And like you said, that that clarity so it's not all that chitter chatter. And that's the goal because it changes our immune system.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, actually, there's science too about getting outside and getting a panoramic, or just having a panoramic view of the world is like a break state for the ruminating brain.
Mm.
And not just that, but the looking up. I haven't researched this, so don't quote me on this, but in passing, in it, with the practice of hypnosis or meditation, we we do the upward gaze, and there's supposedly some science even behind that, taking you into your parasympathetic drive, or helping, initiate that process instead of being in fight or flight, so parasympathetic, rest, digest, and heal, right? And sympathetic is fight, flight, freeze, fawn. And
Hold on, go back. Rest. Say that again.
rest, digest, and heal.
Okay. So anyone who's listening, and that might be a first time you've heard that, rest, digest, and heal. And so many times when people, most especially women, say, "Oh, I'm not sleeping," and they discount it, your body's not going to change. And most of the time, the weight that we carry, the hormone imbalance, the inflammation, I don't know, what else am I missing, Bree? Those are probably the biggest three.
Yeah.
The inflammation that turns to the weight that messes up with the hormones. It's like this blah, blah, like circle that just really cycles, doesn't give us the digestion, then we don't heal. And so okay, and the next one.
So sympathetic nervous system is fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. And I think they keep adding words to that. Actually, there's another one that I'm forgetting, but fawn being going into a people pleasing or some kind of unhealthy coping mechanism just to keep the peace.
Mm. And you know what? It's such bogus truth. There's no truth to it because there's no truth in putting something off. It's almost like a snowball. It
Oh,
just gets
sure.
bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yes.
And that's also, like the sleep. And people are like, well, I just get 5 hours of sleep. Well, there are people that are short sleepers. There
Yeah.
are.
Yep.
They've been like that though their whole lives. And
Yes.
that is a very, very select small percentage. So, rest, digest, and heal. Oh, that's going to be a new thought for a lot of people. I think it's great that you acknowledge that. And yet, simply doing the dishes can be annoying thing to do, and we need to do it. we may not want to. It is required, especially when we're eating at home, as much as hopefully we can, because that can be that adjustment when we know what it is and we're creating that actual meal that can be very significant. Was
Yeah,
there
you're
anything? Sorry,
you're
go ahead.
no, you're leading me into another point again. I love how this conversation is happening because I'm like, oh, yeah, this is perfect. So, something I had to learn and that I've experienced in my own life and in my own healing is I I had my identity wrapped up in having a big fat fancy career. And so when I quit working and I became a stay-at-home wife and part-time mother to a stepson, so we didn't have him all the time, that was my worst nightmare. That was the thing I absolutely never wanted to do in my
Mhm.
life. And I had to change my perception of all of that. I had to decide that I liked cooking, that I enjoyed prepping, that there was importance in these things, that there was importance in having the laundry done and folded and put away. And, just I was the second half of a partnership, not the second rate citizen in the household. And now I know that there's a whole body of evidence actually that shows that just changing your perception to things like stress, like we like to call them in the Worthy Collective, right? Opportunities for growth or challenges, right? We rename them, we reframe them, and that literally changes the physiological response in the body. So where that stuff maybe used to be like, oh, you went into fight or flight. I have to do dishes again. Why isn't somebody else helping me with the dishes? Well, now it's like, no, this is an important task. It's important for everybody's brains to have a tidy home, whatever you want to tell yourself about it. And then into rest, digest, and heal you go instead. So the story we're literally telling ourselves about these things
Mhm.
changes the physiological response in the body.
We just said it, I believe it was on Sunday, where it is the opportunity that we get to.
Yes.
And that switching our mindset is literally a flip of a switch. And I love that you did share that because for someone, a woman most especially, and someone's, because there are women who are the breadwinner and then the husband is shifting that partnership and there's different opportunities and the blessing of seeing how you can do what you do in the best way to do it.
No matter what it is. If you work on I worked on a door line at Honda back when I was younger for a year. And
Hey,
mhm,
so
yeah.
interesting.
I've done a lot of weird jobs, let me tell you. Like if we started to go through the list, it's wacky, some of the things I've done. But yes, I worked on a door line at Honda, which was very tedious work. But the better, you got with the techniques, then you'd get to learn a new process, or whatever. But it was still, I mean, you're making doors for cars. People need cars. Everybody needs a way to get back and forth to, whatever. So if you can find a different perspective, a more positive viewpoint on anything, you're going to just change your life.
And I think that that's really important because you and I, we usually catch it, and that's what's so spirited about aligned action, aligned activities, alignment and opportunities. And not to say that we don't have dippy days or we don't have challenges for sure. I would say the biggest difference that I think, and I'd love your feedback on this. This is what's so cool because there's no like we have a frame of the interview is meant to share who you are, what you've overcome, where you are right now, what you are putting out into the world, and those experiences along the way. And so the two things that I think I'd love to know if you agree and or have edits. The biggest difference with that alignment would be number one, the choice to see it differently.
Hmm.
So if something comes up, to see it and be able to say, is there a different way to see that? And I love the positive, but sometimes people, have kind of gotten into a drudgery
Yep.
of the not so good things and then some people would and have called me before Pollyanna, like, oh, she's positive about everything. Well, yeah, it is a choice. It is a choice. And not to be, um, so that number one part would be that choice to find the solution. The second would be to have others around us to call us on it.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's not a matter of saying, hey, you got toilet paper on your foot, you know. It's a matter of saying, hey, did you want that? Keep that with you? Like say it in a kind way and say it now versus an hour later where you're like, seriously? An
Yeah.
hour? You guys all saw this and didn't say anything? You
Yeah.
know, doesn't need to be on a microphone. But being able to be discreet of like, hey, is that what you're going for? Which I believe is the accountability. And when you love and trust that space, you want each other to elevate. And you also know that you could be the next person with toilet paper on your foot, and you want to be
Yeah.
surrounded by someone who's going to be willing to say something about it. So those two places, I think that it's the choice to see something different. And in that, it's kind of a point two in that of being able to say not doing it that long. You know what I mean? Like, how long are you going to be frustrated, miserable, and saying over and over the story and retelling it? And then that circle that calls you out and says, hey, it happened. How else? Do you want another viewpoint? You know?
Yeah, you're hitting on so you mentioned in the intro that I had just completed a workshop.
Hmm.
And yes, I did it with a partner named India, called India, named India. That sounded weird. Anyways, anyways, it was so fun and so great. And we're going to just keep on rolling with those. And we got the most amazing feedback. So hopefully, sky's the limit after that. But I did the second night talk on the mind body connection. And basically, what you're saying is exactly true because the more we stay in the ditch with those unhelpful thoughts, which are usually coming from unhelpful subconscious programming, so we don't even realize it's a habitual pattern. But the more we keep repeating that pattern, the more we reinforce the same neural pathways that are going to keep on having us repeat the pattern.
Mm,
So basically, we use our conscious reasoning minds to make a new choice. And then we start to tell ourselves it's not about toxic positivity, although obviously having a positive attitude does help for healing. And sometimes we have to fake it until we make it. Okay. So better that than the alternative. And then also repetition is one way that the subconscious mind and the brain gets programmed. So we want to repeat to ourselves what we want to affirm to ourselves instead of repeating the old negatives.
mm,
And it literally wires the brain.
mhm,
So I don't want to get too technical with the technical like jargon or whatever, but it's it's really important. It's really important to make that new decision, to make that new choice, to tell yourself something different, something healing, something positive. And the more you do it, the more you'll rewire the brain to override those old unhelpful programs and neural pathways that are created in the brain.
I am pausing because I know that there's going to be many people who watch this and it's the first time they've ever heard that. And I believe what's so significant about our technology, our voices, what we're choosing into nowadays that we didn't necessarily have access to. You and I didn't grow up together, but based on our age, we did grow through the same times of what was accessible to us and not accessible to us. We
Yeah.
were outside a lot more in nature, which can reset our bodies
Yeah.
200%. Yet, what I also know to be true is that staying stuck and repeating old generational garbage is a choice.
Yes.
And
Sorry, go ahead.
no, 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 go ahead.
Yeah, and it's really important to me to show people that this is true and back it with science
Hmm.
so that they understand they can physiologically change their brain and their body. And for some people, that's not interesting. Did you notice this only got an echo?
Yeah, it did kind of change. Hold on, let me try. See if there's something. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, good,
Yes.
good. I think
Okay.
when I changed screens, it might have changed the audio. Sorry.
Oh, okay. No problem. Well, I'm glad I said something and we didn't just try to suffer through that though.
Oh, when you were saying it, I was like, I'm looking at my internet and trying to make sure. I'm like, this is live. Um, Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, much better. Okay, so yeah, for some people, the science isn't interesting, but I also am surrounded by a lot of skeptics, or
Mhm.
I've spent most of my life feeling like people are looking at me like I'm the girl with three heads. So I like having the science to back it. And I feel like it really gives people permission and empowers people to know they can make change.
And the ability to be ready when they are ready. It will take activity, yet they're super simple steps
Yes.
because it is it starts with one step at a time, and it's a pattern because you're going to make a step. You're going to go in some kind of direction. You're going to do something, and unless you stop to question what it is that you're doing, how you're doing it, taking time for silence, taking time for prayer, taking time for grounding. Like there's a list a mile long. And the part about food, now we have more help. There's a Yucca app out there. There's a number of different apps that will scan things and it'll tell you because we may not have the time or the energy to understand some of that science that is there. Someone else did. Someone else did the work.
Yeah.
And what I want to showcase the most is that if somebody here, and I say somebody because we do this and share this on YouTube, and so the services that we carry are not only for women, they're for men as well. Therefore, I know that you work with couples, you work with families. The difference is of our collective, we meet because as women, there's certain things that we have in common, and we're solopreneurs. It can be extremely lonely and frustrating, especially if, like in my household, Mark doesn't own his own business, so that we don't have the same language. I can share with some things with him to have some feedback. Yet there's a difference when I can run it by Bree and say, "Hey, what do you think? I'd love your feedback, your experience in this situation." And she's able to say, "Yeah, I have had that." Or, "You know what? I know somebody who experienced that," or "I want to introduce you." And so then the circle becomes greater and stronger based on the ask. And that's what you started doing was asking for more support. You went to, and I don't know if I actually knew this. I don't know if I knew that it started with a chiropractor. I don't know if we actually talked about that. Yet that's an awareness. And it was funny because Declan literally just said to me this morning, could he go to a chiropractor? And I kind of giggle because you brought it up and I was just like, he goes, "So
Mhm.
what exactly do they do?" And I was like, I'm driving right now, so I'm not going to look it up, but my thoughts on a chiropractor would be they release the tension within your body so that you can let go of some of the inflammation, like his shoulder was hurting. And I said it could be, simple stretching, an Epsom salt bath, magnesium, more hydration. Yeah,
Yeah.
sugar. That's like for
Mhm.
everything, for all things, because we're what, 70% water, in our bodies. So, but starting there, and the difference was you asked for help.
Yeah. And there was a moment in time actually where my husband and I were talking about it. I'd been going for a couple of months, 3 days a week. And I remember looking at my husband and thinking, oh, I think we've wasted this money.
Mm,
And I feel guilty about it.
mm,
But, or no, I'm sorry. I think it was at the 2 month mark that my neck pain went away and never came back. But before that, I was contemplating whether, with my husband, whether or not this had been a waste of money and a waste of time. And then all of a sudden, boom, it was gone. And yeah, so I think the premise, I don't want to speak for chiropractors and they're all a little different, but the premise is when your bones of your spine sublux or, they get out of alignment in any way, it'll pinch the nerves. There's all those tiny little holes that the nerves come out of every vertebrae where it connects to the next one. There's a hole that where the nerves come out. And so if they twist or do this or whatever, they're impinging on those nerves. So chiropractors are trying to get that spine back into alignment so that your nerves, because listen, your nerves serve every organ of your body too.
mm.
So if your nerves are being impinged on, you may not be having proper organ function.
Which definitely affects every human out there in that digestion factor and the rest, because if your body's out of alignment and you're not
Oh,
resting as well. And so, again, and we talk about this a lot, is that there's so many resources and tools and people and humans that have incredible gifts and talents. And so, you know, my recommendation would be to interview and ask, because what's very significant nowadays is that we are all equal in the world.
yes.
You're not equal in the marketplace based on how we deliver what we deliver. And like, somebody like Bree could be doing her sessions in person and online the rest of her life. And some people never step into the workshop. And I can say this, she overcame a lot of different concerns, comfort zones, her own stuff to transition in person, technology, like all the deliverables, because she wants to get the message out in a multiple of ways, and understanding that that's also what our doctors and people in medical have when they take the time to learn more options, and a chiropractor who can have access to nutrition and options. So interview people. And this is an interview, INNER. Take the
Yeah.
time to interview to see who's going to be a part of your team, a part of your support system, because
Yes.
it matters. And that's a beautiful start, because I don't know if I quite recognize that it started with you asking, allowing, gave you some of that nutritional tweaks, because so many of us don't realize. And like, I know my father-in-law said, "Oh, well, we had that growing up and that was fine." Well,
Yeah.
sadly, that label of the ingredients back then is different. It
Yes.
might still say the same brand, but it's not necessarily a good representation of truly what it was. And we don't realize that that could be making us unwell. Um,
And we also don't have to continue to live with this idea that as we age, we're going to just start to feel worse.
oh, no, we can
Yeah.
feel better than ever.
Yes.
Um, One of those things that I've heard so many times is when we do actually do the self-actualizing moment. Like I said I was going to do this and I did it. Woohoo! You instantly feel better. You're proud of yourself. And no one needed to, like making your bed, a simple thing that you do. And then you're like, I did something, or I didn't hit snooze. Woohoo, high five me.
Well, let's even talk about that for a second. In putting this workshop together, I wanted to talk about the placebo effect because this is the power of belief in healing.
Mm,
And so I was doing some research on placebos and how often they worked. And of course, study to study, you get just so many varying degrees of numbers. And if you think about it, I mean, we're talking about the human body here. It's complicated. But there was a Harvard article that I read where they had studied, they were writing, I think, about like a conglomeration of studies that they had looked at, and they had discovered that placebos worked oftentimes as well as treatment. Then placebos worked even when they were labeled as placebos. And so, what they deduced from that was the simple act of taking the medicine and caring for yourself in
Mhm.
some way had a healing effect in the body. So, when I started going to the chiropractor and I started cooking for myself, it was the first time I'd actually put me first.
Mm.
And I instantly had hope for healing.
Somebody needed to hear that, Bree. And such a reminder, especially I want to say for women, and I'm starting to see it more for men based on the environments that I'm in, um, that it's true for men as well. Yet as women, we definitely have that juggle, especially in the world today when we wear almost, and we talked about it on Sunday, the matter of not saying no. Oh, sure, I'll do that. Yeah, no problem. I'll do that. Oh, yeah, I can do that too. Oh, sure. And then all of a sudden we're like, well, why is our body breaking down? Because you need some oxygen and you just gave it all away.
Yeah, and you can't give from an empty well. But also, the more we align,
Mhm,
again, the more we are able to get still or find a way to be present in those little tasks that the mundane tasks that we all have to do, then the more we do fill our cup.
mhm,
And the more we stay in that place of being able to still give, but without exhausting ourselves.
mhm,
But for me, it was like an obligation, right? Everything was an obligation and everything was a chore. And this is what I was telling myself.
mhm.
Oh, life is just one big chore. I hate this. I don't want to do this, you know, and I don't complain at myself at all like that anymore.
Good.
But it took practice.
It absolutely, well, it was the pattern that you had to stop and ask yourself, what am I doing? What am I doing? And how am I doing it? And I think a lot of us want to be more present, yet we think just putting our phone down is it. But our mind, if our mind is racing, it doesn't matter. I recognize that there was a conversation that was had, um, and I wasn't 100% present to it. I don't know what I was thinking about, but I do remember part of it, and I missed a detail, and it came up this morning in the car with Declan, and I was like, oh, wow, I really wasn't present. I had too many things going on in my mind. And yet, because we were driving, of course, that's how, we're just having a conversation. And I thought, oh, I'm really glad you brought that up again. And I'm really sorry I didn't take it as serious in the moment of acknowledging what was going on. And then we had a completely different conversation. And I recognized that little blip. And it's really neat. We were on a call, I think it was about a month ago, and Charlotte, who owns the school where Lori Love Jones learned and grew her business, and she is a very wise woman in her 80s. Do you remember that? And she was talking about that she's truly worked to not be always thinking, to be,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, what? It's a thing? And then hearing you talk about that opportunity we have doing the dishes and full gratitude and you know, like getting out of the fast lane. Like we're still driving, but just in a calmer state.
Or even if you are thinking, and this is a mindful meditation practice that we now know the science behind or whatever, but you're thinking, but you're noticing what you're thinking.
Mm.
And then you're asking yourself with non-judgment, but with like the curiosity of a beginner mind, they call it in Buddhism, right? Is this thought true?
Mm,
Is it mine? Did I get this from someone else? And then we can again turn this into a more complicated conversation about subconscious programming and things like that, but we won't. But it's just a noticing. You begin to notice your
mhm,
thoughts. You begin to, and then eventually, as you get good at that, you begin to go, no, it's not true. So I'm going to tell myself something else. What am I going to tell myself? Well, maybe it's a direct reversal of what I was telling myself before that wasn't helpful,
mhm,
but whatever it is. And so this practice of just, it's like peeling back the layers of an onion, right? This whole process. But what am I thinking? Oh, well, that's not really helpful. And if you're beating yourself up, that's also been proven to just reinforce those old neural pathways that you're not wanting.
mhm.
So we don't beat ourselves up. It's like we're the 3-year-old version of ourselves. Oh, honey, you know, you wouldn't talk to your friends that way. Why are you talking to
Never.
yourself that way?
Exactly, exactly. And some of my clients, I'll have them wear a rubber band for the first time being around me because we do only spend so much time together. And outside of that, being able to have something to be like, oh, that kind of hurt. Do I do that a lot? It's like when you give up something, you don't realize when you give it up how much you had it,
Yeah.
you know, and or how much you did it. And that also brings me, this is a little deeper. This is where we go in our collectives, and acknowledging it because I think it will speak to someone somewhere because of the work and being around someone like yourself that is willing to share these experiences, the science, the education, that that presence of experience, the wisdom of choosing in. I now recognize that when someone triggers me, I'm looking at the situation differently and thinking, have I ever done that? And what part of that is truly triggering me? Because again, picturing the person as a child, we would respond completely different if it
Yeah.
was a child. We'd have much more grace. There'd be more of a teaching moment. When an adult, it's not exactly the same thing. And not that we are teaching in a hierarchy, but we want to edit those younger generations. Um, and it definitely has caught me a little differently to pause more and reflect and figure out like, wow, where is this coming from? Because it's also control, like recognizing that so much of that is a situation to leave it where it is, just let it, or in the book, let them, either way or however you say it, to be like, wait a second, how am I letting that situation truly like raise up my blood pressure when it doesn't need to be? And the more we acknowledge that, the calmer, the better our digestion, the calmer everything is, because it's gonna happen. But what's our point of reaction?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about how our perceptions create our reality, and so we want to keep in check again, is this me projecting my own stuff onto something that somebody said or did, and then deciding whether or not, and this is part of the practice too that I learned and have, I mean, I continue, I'm a constant work in progress. I will never stop doing this work, but
Hello.
because it is so effective,
Hmm.
why would you ever quit? But without perfection being a thing, right? Progress, not perfection. We want to leave perfection at the door as a recovering perfectionist. At least I do. I
100%.
I'd way rather not take myself so seriously. But recognizing when a response, instead of recognizing when we are projecting, recognizing that our perceptions do create our reality. So, are we projecting? Are we making something that isn't there? And then when we do come from that place of deciding and taking that pause, then we have a moment to reflect and think, does this require not a reaction. Okay, first of all, we stop ourselves from reacting, and instead we decide, does this require a response? And then what is that response, right? A healthy response, hopefully. So instead of an immediate reaction, because we're reacting from our programming, we're reacting from our negative beliefs and perceptions, we actually take the pause and go, is this me? Is this them? Is this really important? Do I need to just let this go? Do I need to address it? And then you can come from a different place.
Makes such a difference. And again, I believe the foundation right there is the calmness, because that, especially in the perfectionism and as women, we jump into things. Yeah, sure, I'll do that. Okay. Instead of the pause where you really kind of check in, like, whoa, 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 whoa. And so many times I think nowadays I pause and people are like, did my internet, is there something wrong? It's like, no, no, it's just a true pause, you know? And that example, that opportunity, a big one was I feel like I'm on repeat with this. Maybe we'll do a book study on the next conversation by Jefferson Fisher, because
Hmm.
his conversation of it's got to start with a pause.
Yes.
It's got to start. And that makes me feel better because I've never been the person that like immediately answers or, like has those one-liners or, like
Hmm.
I do think of ideas and I do have sometimes it's later because,
Hmm.
I needed to take some things in.
Hmm.
Um, it won't happen though if I don't pause because sometimes, it's also in that conversation of, thinking ahead instead of, truly listening, truly being present to the situation and thinking, okay, maybe your response was the response.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we were discussing this the other day when I said I call them I carried a watermelon moments.
Yes, yes, yes. Share that. Share that. That's so good.
Because if people remember the Dirty Dancing movie and Jennifer Grey gets invited to go to the late night dance party that Patrick Swayze and I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the other actress's name, but she gets invited and she's carrying a watermelon and Patrick Swayze walks up and he's like, "What's she doing here?" And she's like, "I carried a watermelon." And then after he walks away, she's like, "I carried a watermelon." You know, I hate walking away from conversations feeling like I had an I carried a watermelon moment. So it still happens all the time. I still struggle from not taking the pause, and I got myself last year actually into a really big ordeal by just saying yes so quickly to something that I had really honestly no idea what I was getting myself into, and that was a big lesson learned. So I'm still trying to do better with that. But I'm also like you, like I needed time to step back and process things. I don't have that quick, and I would say actually you do have a much quicker wit than I have, or you're much quicker on your feet than I am. I have a tendency to need to step back and think about things and really get tuned into myself, but I'm still a work in progress.
I am the same because it's the same to be true for that is like saying yes or no too quickly to think about the ramifications. And so, truly, in that pause is important. I'm so grateful for one of the greatest pauses I ever made in my career, business-wise, was I really, really had the vision of the collective. I had this community because it was things that I was missing. There were so many things that part of it, and I was ready to jump in. And I just kept asking. I was like, is this the right way to go? And I kept getting no. And I was like, really? What am I doing? Let's
Square
go.
peg, round hole. Come
Yeah, I'll
on.
make it work. I'll make it work. And I'm so proud of myself that I didn't make it. I didn't push that, that square into the round hole or vice versa. I didn't push it because the friend that did, I was seeing her success and I was a little envious and was like, dang it. And then I was like, it's okay. Her journey, my journey, happy for her. A little frustrated on my end that it didn't seem like it aligned. And then it completely fell apart because the backbones of what I was feeling wasn't right. The structure of where I was going to literally load everything wasn't right. And they didn't have it, and the company and all sorts of things weren't right. So I was like, I paused properly,
Yeah.
and it's that wisdom of understanding a decision needs to be made. We talked about this on Sunday. Some situations are a yes, some are a no. And
It,
being able,
yeah, really being able to tune in. This has been life, like 14 years of work for me, for sure, because growing up, even in high school, for whatever reason, for much of my life, let everybody make my decisions for me. And so I was not practiced at tuning into my gut feelings and knowing what a heck yes or hell no was for me.
mm,
And so I'm still learning that. And sometimes I don't see it until in hindsight I look back and I'm like, "Oh, well, you knew, you know." But I'm a lot better at it than I was. And again, that's just really getting for me, it's getting still and quiet every morning. I still practice that every morning because that's just something I find so effective and so important to me and for my peace and for being better at knowing when to say yes and when not to.
well, and it's the care for yourself.
Hmm.
We've been talking a lot about the rhythm versus the routine, the rut. I mean, a routine can still be a rut.
Yeah.
But the truest rhythm that your body craves that because it's also a safe haven, it's a set for the day, and acknowledging those places of what that looks like. And anything new is going to be a little foreign, yet it's also an exchange. Because if we keep grabbing this first thing,
Hmm.
nothing's going to change. And it's what we do in a day that really is the multiplication. It's the micro shifts. I feel like you might have said, um, when you were talking about the chiropractor that you changed your week by doing something twice a week, like you
Three times.
oh, it was 3 times?
Yeah, three
Three times.
times a week.
Oh, I don't know why I wrote 2 times. I don't know what I wrote there. Um, yeah,
It's, I mean,
that
it doesn't really matter,
I
but
know. I was like, what was I putting down there? I'm like, well, what else was it near?
oh, twice a week I went to the meditation center.
Oh, that's what it was. Right, right. I'm like, wait. Twice the meditation. And that's also what I wrote down was it was an invitation. And that's also what I wanted to point out is that when we choose to serve ourselves, the greatest blessings show up like that
Mhm.
because we're open to opportunity. So you started with the chiropractor, and then that came in, and that came, you know what I mean? And then it was the crossover. Well, now I'm doing this for myself 3 times, and now I'm doing this 2 times, and now I'm going to do this. And it doesn't mean you had to say yes, yet it was open to the little bit more than what you were doing, and it was not by yourself.
Yeah. And I never knew what was going to work for me or what wasn't, but I was willing to try. I was willing to try anything. And I've dropped plenty of things, In the beginning with the nutrition, I got really, really strict with myself. And then I realized that it was just one more thing that I was obsessing over
Mm,
and that it wasn't sustainable.
mhm,
But like, what a realization.
mhm,
And now I share that with everybody I talk to that wants to do something when it comes to nutrition or whatever. I'm like, you got to do what's sustainable,
mm.
you
I,
know?
I think that's one of those things that really I have to hold my tongue a little bit with my wisdom where I'm like, listen, it's got to be in all areas of life, and there's got to be a giant amount of grace, like
Yeah.
shovel in the grace, because then and the other day I said something about now I know why my mom, like, it's wild to me in her Alzheimer's, the things that she can't remember at all. And what I've learned from that, the inflammation, the stress, the different things that she has done that's accentuated this sadness of a dis-ease.
Mhm.
And with that, she will pray over her food because it's something she's always done. And I'm laughing to myself thinking, I need to pray over my food because sometimes I don't know if it is food. You know, when you're in these
Right.
positions or places and you're like, I think this is healthy. Is it? And then it's understanding that you can bless what is in front of you and acknowledge that okay, you know, 3 donuts Sunday at the golf outing probably wasn't my best choice. I can tell you the last time I haven't had a donut in forever, yet it wasn't a daily thing. And then finally, when I took the last one, it was still so good, even though it had been out for a little while. I was like, that was delicious. I'm going to, I'm going to recognize that those aren't good around me because it's a very, it's acknowledging something that's a hard disciplinary choice to not say yes. So we definitely don't have them in our house, you know,
Yeah.
because
Well,
access.
yeah, and we are talking about the power of mindset, but having said that, and so like we don't are the beating ourselves up about making a not so great choice or
Mhm.
whatever. Again, like I said earlier, is just reinforcing those old neural pathways that you're trying to override. So that's not really helping you. Just, maybe you follow a 90, I follow like a 90-10 rule, right? If I'm eating well 90% of the time, then 10%. And maybe somebody in the beginning can't be quite that lenient with themselves. Maybe
Mhm.
they have to do
Right.
a 95-5 or whatever the case may be. But, and especially if you're trying to get rid of sugar cravings, sugar cravings are,
Sugar begets sugar. And that's what I found myself. And I was just like, oh, goodness. And it was the acknowledging that where I could also see the emotion of it, where I was like in major celebration that the event was over or almost over because it took so much, because it was like putting on a wedding because it
mm.
was a big event. It had lots of pieces and lots of parts, and then I literally caught myself, I was eating it thinking, this is totally an emotional choice, and I need to celebrate a different way. You know what I mean? Like it would have been great to package a couple of apples or something, you know, to
But
celebrate.
then this is what I would tell a client. I would pat myself on the back for having that awareness because that's a win, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It is. And it's also being able to talk about it, to share so that when somebody does feel that and they recognize what they're grabbing, it's always great to recognize what is it that is bringing you to that place
Yeah.
when before you might have been more disciplined, and it's embodying what it is that you truly want, which is greater health, or you want to be toned, or you want what is that vision here so that you know when you are facing those situations that you have a choice to make. And even when I did make the choice, I was like, oh my gosh. I mean, like when they came in with the little label and it was like a family-owned bakery, I was like, oh, made with love, made with love. And, and one of those things in appreciation of. So, yes.
But
Oh,
you're taking the whole discussion we had about recognizing your thinking, to even a habit of eating or smoking or whatever the case may be, the recognizing of the reaching for the thing. Practice number one, I recognized it. Then, what is the trigger that brought me here? Practice number two, like all these little steps are wins
yeah.
and are part of the process.
And that is really why ABC is it, awareness before change, because if we're unaware, it doesn't matter. We can give somebody all the steps, and if they're not aware of what they're doing that's opposite or hurtful, or like it's like when you ask somebody, are you open to feedback? Are you open to a suggestion? And they either they don't say anything, their body language says something else. If there's too much space in that, then that contemplation, I'm like, oh, it's okay. You don't really, you're not ready. So when you're ready, we'll be here. We will be here.
Yeah.
We are in the work. We're choosing in. We're having grace. We fall, we get back up, we get back up. And there's a difference in place, and it goes back to those two, is that we do get back up because we have greater purpose. and we are identifying in the truth of what it is we want, need, desire, and require. And then we also have a group of us that are like, get up, let's go. You need a hand? Let's go. Like
Yeah.
we don't, if you want to sit, we're not gonna, make you sit, but we are also gonna call you up. We're gonna call you up, we're gonna call you out. And there was a moment on the worthy where like, hey, sister, we had some words for you. And you were like, oh, I feel it. I got it.
Yeah.
That's the willingness of life of being around people that are not that P word because that's not the goal. It's not
Mm,
the goal at all because, that in one person's eye is not even a thing. It's an illusion, and the opportunity of better than we were yesterday is the greatest gift that we get to give ourselves.
yeah.
So, in closing, is there anything that's crossed your heart or something that you feel that is needed to be shared that maybe we didn't touch on?
I think the most important thing in my messaging right now is I want to empower people to understand how powerful they are. And I want them to own that. I want them to own that divine power within themselves to be able to make change, to create the lives that they desire, or whatever it is that they desire. I just really want people to, and that doesn't mean you don't need a guide at some point. I need guides all the time. I do sessions for myself all the time, but I love telling people that even if you do come to me for help at some point, I am just a guide to remind you that you have everything you need within you. I have nothing more than you do. This is all about empowerment. It's all about personal responsibility. But I don't like saying personal responsibility, even because that can mean like,
Hard work.
yeah, yeah. And just immediately as soon as I said that, I was like, oh, that kind of takes away from the whole empowerment idea, but not. But it's just a language thing, but just own your power, know how powerful you are. Don't let anyone take that away from you, and don't allow yourself to take it away from you anymore either. And yeah, I just really want people to know how how many gifts they have. Like they've been given these divine gifts, and I want them to own it and use it and love themselves with it. And
That is absolutely the most beautiful gift that we can give ourselves. And when we're in a circle of people, we're only greater when we really do find that space and that example for those who are following us, those who are around us, they look to us. It is very significant. So a couple of things. One, I know that there is a beautiful piece of artwork behind you that is your India's mom. So
yes.
that's a hand painting that will make sure that we'll link her information at the bottom of this message in our Worthy Collective and also on our YouTube channel. And then we'll make sure to place your information and how somebody can book a consultation with you, they can learn from you, and making sure that everyone knows that from this space and place that Bree has come from, that she wants to be able to have a chance to have a conversation and make sure that you both are aligned and you're ready to adjust. She takes it nice and sweet. And because I've gone through it, that I can say this now. When I was first introduced, I didn't know. I had the details of why Lori loves her, what she loves most about her, and the gifts that she has. And now I've been able to experience them. And if you've never meditated, being able to work with her and have her create a personal meditation. There's something really special when you realize that somebody is really taking those steps and outline and with her experience of meditation and the calmness in her voice. And even I was like, did you do the special music that's supposed to be like all the hurts and all these things? And she's like, well, yes, because that's been her practice and that's where her study comes from. And that's her experience that we get to lean into. And that when we connect with somebody, like she said, that guides on the path, then we're in a position to multiply our efforts with someone else's time and exposure. And it's super significant. So I hope that you'll give yourself that chance. And if you've come across this because you have something to do in the area of Lyme's and it doesn't affect you, but it does affect someone you love, she's already made an impact in our community. And Tracy's daughter, who's out in Colombia, like not even in the US, that she's now become a resource. Now, there's opportunities and layers, and she's created systems so that if you aren't in the greater Nashville area, that she can support you. And I believe that to be so great. And these workshops are going to be that hands-on opportunity that those who are really ready can really take in the hours and hours of research and development and comparison that you've done and the gifts that you're using. So I'm glad for your willingness because you didn't have to, and that means more. Sometimes people just do it only because they need it and you chose it, and it's from a deep, deep. I mean, I didn't even think that Lyme's disease was curable, and most people would say that it's not. And you proved otherwise.
Yeah.
So beautiful. Thank you for your
Thank you.
precious time.
Yeah,
Thanks for
no.
being you.
Thank you for all of the same things. Thanks for having me on here and having this beautiful conversation. And thanks for being you.
Aw, we're so good together.
This was fun.